Okay, when you're factoring trinomials that are greater than 1, and you do this the way that I taught you to do it, which is the AC method, right? So you have A and C. A is what? 2. And then C is what? -9, right? So you have to multiply to get what? Multiply to get -18 and add to get 3. So you need 2 numbers that do that. So I usually think about the 2 numbers in terms of multiplying first. 2 numbers that come to mind are 3 and 6, okay? Then I usually do trial and error where I say, okay, this is -18. So obviously one of my numbers has to be negative, okay? To get a positive number though, the one that has to be negative would be the smaller number. So if I use 3 and 6, right? So one of these is going to have to be negative. The smaller one's going to be negative because watch, when I do 6 and I add -3, does that give me 3, positive 3? Yeah, and if I did it the other way, if I did -6 plus 3, wouldn't that give me -3? And did I want a -3? No, you wanted a positive 3. So you have to be careful with your integers. So this is how you're going to write this out. So your 2 numbers that you're going to have are going to be a -3 and a 6. Those are your 2 numbers. What do I use those 2 numbers to do? I replace it with the middle, right? The 2 numbers that I drop down are what? The 2n squared and then the -9, right? And then I have this -3 and 6. Some people would be like, oh, which one do I put first? Do I put 6 first or do I put -3 first? It doesn't matter. Okay, so you can do -3n plus 6n. So is everyone aware of how and why I replaced that? Yes? Okay. The next step would be to do what? Parentheses, right? So put parentheses. So you're putting parentheses, right? The parentheses remind you to take out what? Greatest common factor. Do you have anything you can divide 2 and 3 by? No. So the only other thing that I see inside those parentheses that they both have is the n, right? So I know I can take out an n. You don't have to put the division, but I just do it just to remind yourself just to put the n on the outside. When you divide, you're left with a 2n, right? Minus what? -3, because see how the n's cancel out? And then here they didn't cancel out is because I had 2 n's. Because look, this is the same thing. Jaden, see, this is the same thing as me doing this. And when you divide by 1n, see how you still have that 2n left? That's why I still have that 2n. All right, now I look at the next term. The next term, you usually don't take a variable out, like an n. You usually just take a number. What number can I take out? What number or what factor do both of these have? 3. okay? So I am going to divide this by 3. My ultimate goal is to get the same thing in these parentheses, right? So I'm going to take out positive 3. So I'm going to put the 3 on the outside, because whatever you divide by, you're going to put on the outside. 6n divided by 3. 2n. Negative 9 divided by 3.
3.
Negative 3. Do I have matching factors?
Yes.
Okay, so I use one of the matching factors, and then I use, where does my other factor come from? My outside numbers. So someone tell me what my 2 factors are. N plus 3, and what else? 2n minus 3, okay? But there's a trick to this, okay? A lot of you guys love to use the Desmos calculator, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with you using the Desmos calculator because it can be on your test. You can use it on your test. But if I asked you for the answer to a quadratic, the answer to a quadratic is whatever goes through the x-intercept, right? Okay, so I want you guys to keep this in mind, okay? But watch what happens when I put it in the graphing calculator, okay? And I know you guys already know how to put it in the graphing calculator, but I'm going to take number 2. Do you see number 2? And watch what happens. So number 2 says, and what can I replace the n's with? X, right? So if I literally typed this, because on your quiz, you're going to have something like this. So if I typed in 2n squared, right? And then I did plus 3n minus 9. What does this say? It's not what I'm trying to do. I just want to graph it. Is it still doing the same thing? I'll make sure I can get it. Oh, because I was putting, I'm silly. I was putting the n in. So note to self, don't do what Miss Boland just did, which she's putting the n's in. So replace those with the x's. Okay, so when I did what I was supposed to do, which was put an x instead of an n, watch this. All right, where do you guys see n plus 3 and 2n minus 3? And I know it looks like a mess right now, but watch. Because they're going to ask you what your answers are for that quadratic equation. This is my quadratic, right? My factors were what? 2n minus 3. And then I had what? N plus 3. What I tell you about things that are in parentheses? Like vertex form. They're opposite signs, right? Okay, watch what Miss Boland does. Just in case you forget the AC method, right? And you need to figure out the answer, and the answers are only written, look at this. If the answers are written like this, do you see this on the graph anywhere? No, but watch. What's one answer? Where do you see potential -3? This one, because it's the opposite, right? Okay, so that's the opposite. But then this one, 1.5. How would, obviously that would mean that 1.5 would have to come from here. But you have to know why. So the reason that it is the opposite, and I'm gonna write these next to, because these are your answers. Why are these your answers? Tell me again. They go, what do they go through? The X. Your answers always go through the X, right? So far all you guys know is that this is -3 because Ms. Boland told you it was the opposite, right? That's all you know. But watch this. I want you guys to take your factors and add this to it. Put equals 0. Okay? And if you solve them, watch. How do I get n by itself? Subtract 3, right? So n equals -3. Now do you see where it came from? Why I tell you the opposite? So that's one of your factors. Does the parabola go through 2 points on the x-axis? Yes. The other point is what? 1.5. So what did I do over here? I set this equal to 0, right? So obviously I'm going to take the other one, set it to equal to 0. I would do the same thing and solve it. When I solve it, I'm left with 2n equals 3. What's 2n equals 3? How do I solve that? How do I get n by itself? Yep. And I'm left with n equals 3 over 2. So if I had $3 and I was like, hey, Daniel, you can have half of it, how much would I give him? 1.5. So if I had $3 and I gave Daniel half, that would equal 1.5. Where else do you see 1.5? On the x-axis. Yeah. So do you see how the factors relate to the x-intercepts? Yes. Writing all of this down would be good. So how do the factors relate to the x-intercepts? You set them equal, right? So you're going to set factors, write this down, equal to 0 and solve. For x. You usually should get an x equals and an x equals. An x equals, in this case, -3, and an x equals 1.5. Because those are two x-intercepts. Your answers are always going to be where they intersect, where the graph intersects on the x-intercept or the x-axis. Because sometimes they will give you like a quadratic equation, and sometimes they'll ask you for the factors. But then other times they'll ask you for just the answers. And you have to know how to do both. Because if I ask you for just the answers, can you use Desmos? Yeah, Desmos just shows you the answers, right? But if I ask you for the factors, Desmos is not going to give you that, right? Desmos might give you 1, and you could convert this into the opposite, but it's not going to give you this. That's why you have to know how to do it both ways. So you use your factors, you use the AC method to get your factors. To get your actual answers, you set them equal to what? Equal to 0. Okay. This is going to help you whenever you try to solve on Desmos and you get confused. I don't want you guys to be confused. So make sure you remember AC method for the factors and set them equal if you need your x-intercepts.